An unprecedented move, President Trump has authorized U.S. military action in Venezuela, resulting in the capture of President Nicolás Maduro and his wife. This announcement has sent shockwaves through the international community, as the United States rarely intervenes so directly in the affairs of another sovereign nation. Trump declared that the U.S. would temporarily run Venezuela to oversee a transition of power, a statement that has sparked intense debate both at home and abroad. This scene sets the stage for a deep dive into the motivations, reactions, and far-reaching consequences of this bold decision. Direct U.S. military intervention and the temporary takeover of another country's government is extremely rare in modern history. Typically, such actions require clear congressional approval, which was notably absent in this case. The decision to capture a sitting president and assume control over Venezuela marks a dramatic escalation in U.S. foreign policy. This move is not just about Venezuela, it signals a willingness to act unilaterally, raising questions about the future direction of American global engagement. Venezuela is a country rich in resources, but plagued by deep political divisions and economic crises. The U.S. has long been concerned about instability in the region, especially given Venezuela's strategic importance in oil reserves. By intervening, the U.S. takes on the enormous responsibility of governance and stabilization, navigating a complex landscape of local factions, economic hardship, and international scrutiny. The decision reflects both opportunity and risk for American interests in Latin America. Back home, Trump's decision has ignited fierce debate. Many Republicans are hailing the move as a demonstration of strong leadership and a fulfillment of campaign promises to be tough on international issues. On the other hand, Democrats and critics argue that Trump has overstepped his constitutional authority by bypassing Congress. The clash highlights deep divisions in American politics, with each side interpreting the intervention through its own ideological lens. Controversy over Trump's authority to launch military action without congressional approval brings the issue of executive power to the forefront. Supporters argue that decisive action is sometimes necessary for national security, while opponents warn that unchecked executive power undermines democratic oversight. This debate is not new, but the scale and boldness of the Venezuela intervention have intensified the conversation, raising questions about the balance of power in the U.S. government. Global response has been swift and critical. Many countries, especially Venezuela's neighbors in Latin America, have condemned the U.S. intervention as a violation of Venezuelan sovereignty and international law. Allies and rivals alike are questioning the legitimacy of America's actions, with some warning that this could set a dangerous precedent for future interventions. The diplomatic fallout is likely to be significant, straining relationships and complicating U.S. foreign policy for years to come. America's allies are now faced with a dilemma: support the U.S. and risk alienating their own citizens, or distance themselves and risk weakening alliances. Meanwhile, global competitors like Russia and China are closely monitoring the situation, considering diplomatic or even military responses to counter U.S. influence in the region. The intervention could reshape alliances and rivalries, with long-term consequences for global stability. Legality of the U.S. intervention is under intense scrutiny. Critics argue that the action violates both Venezuelan sovereignty and established norms of international law. Supporters claim that humanitarian concerns and regional security justify the move. Legal experts are debating whether Trump's actions could be challenged in U.S. courts or international tribunals, adding another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. Intervention in Venezuela carries significant risks for the broader Latin American region. Neighboring countries worry about spillover effects, including refugee flows, economic disruption, and increased anti-U.S. sentiment. The move could embolden other leaders to take drastic actions or provoke unrest among local populations. Regional organizations are calling for restraint and dialogue, but the situation remains tense and unpredictable. President Trump has referenced the Monroe Doctrine, a 19th-century policy asserting U.S. influence in the Western Hemisphere to justify the intervention. By invoking this doctrine, Trump signals a return to more assertive unilateral American policies in the region. This historical reference is controversial, as it recalls a time when the U.S. frequently intervened in Latin American affairs, often with mixed results. The U.S. now temporarily overseeing Venezuela, the challenge of managing a peaceful transition of power looms large. Stabilizing the country, rebuilding institutions, and addressing humanitarian needs will require significant resources and diplomatic skill. The U.S. must navigate local resistance, international criticism, and the risk of prolonged involvement. Success is far from guaranteed, and the world is watching closely. Venezuela's vast oil reserves make it a country of immense economic interest. The U.S. intervention could reshape global energy markets and affect oil prices worldwide. Control over Venezuela's resources is a key factor in the unfolding drama, with both economic opportunity and risk at play. International companies and governments are closely monitoring developments, aware that the outcome could have far-reaching financial implications. U.S. intervention in Venezuela could trigger broader geopolitical tensions. Other global powers may see this as a challenge to their influence and respond in kind, either diplomatically or militarily. The risk of escalation is real, with the possibility of proxy conflicts or increased militarization in the region. The world is entering a period of heightened uncertainty, with Venezuela at the center of a new great power rivalry. Media coverage of the intervention is shaping public opinion both in the U.S. and around the world. Narratives vary widely, with some outlets emphasizing the need for stability and others warning of imperial overreach. Social media is amplifying voices on all sides, fueling debate and sometimes spreading misinformation. How the story is told will influence political outcomes and the legacy of this intervention. As the world reacts to the U.S. intervention in Venezuela, the future remains uncertain. Will the U.S. succeed in stabilizing the country and facilitating a peaceful transition, or will the move backfire, leading to greater instability and conflict? The coming weeks and months will be critical as leaders, citizens, and the international community grapple with the consequences of this historic decision. One thing is clear: the world is watching and the stakes could not be higher.